There was a grand convention called the Startup Mahakumbh, and to everyone's surprise, Union Minister of Commerce and Industry Piyush Goyal came up with a harsh criticism and calling for introspection for the startup community, saying that they are just wasting time and resources focusing on all the wrong areas, whereas China is focusing on the right areas.
We are focused on food delivery apps, turning unemployed youth into cheap labor so the rich can get their meals. And against that, what does a Chinese startup do? Work on developing electric mobility, battery technologies, and with that, they're today dominating the electric mobility ecosystem. We are very proud of what India has done. But are we the best in the world as yet? Not yet. Should we aspire to be? Or are we going to be happy being delivery boys and girls?
You can guess the immediate reaction which came up. So let's begin. Here is what we are going to explore in this video. Number 1. Why Piyush Goyal might actually be right. Is there a hidden urgency behind all the criticism? Number 2. What is the startup community saying in response, and what real valid complaints are they raising? Number 3. And most importantly, the MSME story, how they are the real workhorses of India's economy, but still locked out of the limelight. And number 4, why India's large private sector seems disengaged and how that's a massive problem. After the 1991 reforms, our economy was mostly driven by the growth in service sector. So we had ingrained an idea that anything related to the service sector should be the sought after way forward. When you see excess of delivery apps, quick commerce, basic online services coming up, this is just an extension of that second order mindset developed out of the culture of service-based economy. For example, let's say there is a company which has raised funding of $5.5 million to provide what? Just maid service in 15 minutes. Or there is another company which has raised $3.2 million to provide delivery of fashion apparels in just 60 minutes. But would you really need to buy a fashion wear in quick commerce? When it is expected that Indian entrepreneurs would build businesses that would compete with global counterparts, these people are finding it easy to compete and kill the local businesses. The cunning VCs pour in lots of cash into these particular businesses. The companies then burn this cash just to destroy the local ecosystem and change customer buying behavior. Yet, even after all these companies most of the time end up in forever losses. While in the meantime, the promoters and some investors make a very good fortune through the high value fundings, so that at the end they can list these companies and drain out money from the Indian stock market through the IPOs. This is the basic modus operandi what you have seen in the recent case of the Blue Smart scandal, and that's what veteran media person Suhail Seth referred to as a racket.
80% of the startups in India are nothing but a racket. The first thing that the startup founders do is buy themselves Lamborghinis and homes in Amrita Shergill Marg and big apartments.
This is exactly why the minister criticized the whole community, like, what nonsense are you guys doing? With this mindset, you want India to prosper. In the 60s and the 70s, Japanese companies dominated the world. Later, some of the Korean and then the Chinese companies secured the place, be it any domain. While these high-valued startups are not just even trying, there is another layer which is not directly visible. If you notice carefully, cutting-edge technologies that are built by the nations throughout history become an extension of their geopolitical interest, be it the Industrial Revolution, the Electric Revolution, the electronics, and then computers, and now deep tech and AI. All these eventually become assets and tools of the nations to use for their geopolitical ambitions. If India wants to enter the true Amrit Kal, it needs to build strategic technology and not just some high-end service apps. Soon after Piyush Goyal's speech, IPO-bound quick commerce Zepto's founder lashed out on X handle with a long heartfelt post. It went viral for sure, but if you really read it, most of it missed the point. The government isn't just asking startups to grow and generate employment. Startups are not an employment exchange. It is asking them to grow deep and grow strategic. Amidst all the tussle of egos, we should also look into what's going on in the ground reality. There are startups, many startups and MSMEs on the ground which are trying hard in those domains which pose a real challenge to the global competitors. But they remain out of the fame, support, PR machinery, limelight, media gossip, and everything else. The real struggle is there, the problems they are facing, and that's why the minister is absolutely wrong in identifying the real struggle. A semiconductor founder posted something on the internet and it went viral crazily. The founder left his coveted job at Intel and started his semiconductor company in India in 2018, well in this present Modi era. He claims to have cracked global clients and also turned his company profitable. Yes, a deep tech startup going profitable within some years. And when the other big names are only burning cash, then comes the shock of the bureaucratic maze leading into sheer darkness. As his product line aligns with the Ministry of Electronics, he participated in many of the RFQs floated. But every time he was turned down by citing under quote, just build and then we will decide, or you build and find your own customers, told by the same bureaucrats who floated these RFQs. The founder countered that no one will burn rupees 10 to 20 crores and waste 2 years to design and build only to be rejected later, as some illustrious officer would just not like it. Now I will highlight my own experience as an entrepreneur running a MSME on how terrible is the mismatch between the policy that the government leadership makes and what happens on or implements on the ground. Imagine this. I am a manufacturing company. I have researched, collaborated and designed and built a specialized safety product for use, let's say in the Indian Railways. Now I don't have enough lobbying power, PR machinery, investors' cash to burn. I take that patented product for a presentation to the concerned departments. Suppose they like the product and wants it to be implemented. 5 to 10 years. That's the average time it takes for a product to pass through the government's trial ecosystem. So first, you find a solution at your own cost and effort, and then wait a decade to see if it's get implemented. Suppose you make it and your product actually becomes the standard item. Now comes the final systematic procurement. Procurement rules, even for special safety items, still follow something called the L1 system, or the lowest bidder wins. A rule made in another archaic era, still unquestioned today, where there is no differentiation between a product and a commodity. So now they want the best quality, but only if it comes at the lowest price, something really contradictory, while you face a relentless inflation. More to it, while the government leadership and the ministers through the PR advertisements will run Make in India campaigns, give nice lectures and speak about Atmanirbharta from the Chinese products. But those ground level working bureaucrats of the same government in reality will procure anything from China or elsewhere if it is available at any lower cost. What follows is a cycle we have all seen. Chinese products undercut the market. MSMEs bleed, trying to compete on margins instead of value or quality. If you raise your voice, if you file a complaint, the machinery turns vindictive. Suddenly you are flagged, delayed, blacklisted, questioned and whatnot. Because at the end of the day, it is not the policymakers who buy. It is the bureaucrats on the ground, and if they don't like you, the system starts working against you. It gives hope to see that at least the large private sectors like the Tata Group is ramping up their semiconductor manufacturing, aiming to reach the topmost layer in this domain. Or Reliance is building in India world's largest data center. But then Minister Goyal highlighted something significant which also needs to be endorsed.
Fancy ice cream and cookies. In fact, I know at least 3 or 4 billionaires whose children make on one brand or the other very fancy ice creams and cookies and run a very successful business, and I have no complaint against that. But is that the destiny of India? क्या भारत का भविष्य उससे संतुष्ट है? We'll need to go global. We'll need to think big. We'll need to be ambitious. We'll need to experiment. We'll need to go beyond the boundaries of our own thinking. Let's not limit ourselves with the past.
The Indian private sector is extremely reluctant in taking risk and invest heavily in R&D for the future. Economic advisor to the Prime Minister, Sanjeev Sanyal, endorsed upon this point multiple times that the Indian large private sector cannot sit idle and do the status quo job which requires no such risk-taking as such, and with extremely low R&D as per data. While US and China were building their technologies in the decade of 2000, remember that time America had gone through dot-com bubble, 9/11, subprime crisis, and yet they kept building the deep tech, big techs of today. Amazon, Google, Tesla, SpaceX, Salesforce, and many others. Similarly, the Chinese were either building technology or manufacturing high-end products for the future. Then, what were the Indian tech giants doing? Just labor arbitrage and margin-based earning. Just ask yourself, why till date majority of the Indian IT services rely on just man-hour concept of earning and not value-oriented earning, as if the whole technology base of India is just a labor force for outsourcing. Who will take the responsibility of degrading the whole tech ecosystem into a mere labor force working in just man hours? Are not these tech giants equally answerable? See what Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, had commented about China way back in 2017.
The popular conception is that companies come to China because of low labor cost. I'm not sure what part of China they go to, but the truth is China stopped being the low labor cost country many years ago. And that is not the reason to come to China from a supply point of view. The reason is because of the skill and the quantity of skill in one location and the type of skill it is.
China has become what it is today not because of the labor arbitrage or low wages, but because of its unbeatable hard skills and technology innovation. When China built Huawei, it wasn't just selling phones, it was securing control over 5G, the nervous system of future wars, data and mobility. That's a strategy. But where is India in that race? We have no such strategic startup response. We have great policies like Make in India, Startup India, you just name it. But the scale of investment and the ease of operations we expected never came. Why? Because the core reforms in the judiciary, the civil services, and institutional processes just never happened. Because reform isn't just a policy, it is like a war, and the biggest enemies, the old immovable yet ever powerful ecosystem, the bureaucracy and a politically pampered judiciary. It is like the elephant in the room.